I'll still have my defense and the offense. So it's just going to be the
All
mix.
right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 20th, 2023 Litchfield Budget Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I'd like to welcome Mr. Peter Plansky to our meeting this evening. He's our school board rep tonight. He's our backup for Mr. Andrew Cutter, who's out of town traveling for work. So, Peter, welcome to your first budget committee meeting.
Thank you very much.
This one's hopefully a fairly easy one on you. Then if you have to fill in the fall, this kind of eases you in a little bit. First on our agenda, any review or additions to tonight's agenda? One thing I am going to do under member input new business, the last bullet point that's there that says, the third bullet point that says communication organization materials, I'm going to move that to the top. I sent you all a link probably about 10 or 15 minutes ago that's to our new portal that we have, so you should have that in the email. We're going to do that first because then everything we do after that, all those documents are on the portal now. So we'll start with that under our new business. Okay, next we have public input. We'll open it up for public input. Seeing no one here, we will close public input. We have one more public input session before we conclude tonight, so if you're watching at home and you want to come visit us down at Town Hall, feel free to stop by. Next we have review and acceptance of minutes, our March 30th, 2023 minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those from Mr. Sullivan?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
I have a motion by Mr. Burke.
Second.
Second by Ms. Douglas. All of those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
Motion carries 8-0-1. And Mr. Sullivan did let me know he was unable to join us tonight, but is going to watch and take care of our minutes for this evening. All right, moving right along. We have, I skipped over correspondence. My apologies. Let's go back and do correspondence real quick. A quick correspondence summary since the last time that we met on March 30th, and I'll read through those. Thanks to Ms. Stevens for putting these together. On March 31st, our bookkeeper provided the committee with the town's monthly budget revenues and special fund balances. On March 31st, she shared the town weekly budget report. On April 2nd, Mr. Sullivan shared the March 30th meeting minutes. On April 4th, Chairman Sun forwarded a response from Town Administrator Kleiner detailing opening positions in the police and fire department. She noted that open positions do not necessarily equate to savings because of increased costs to cover the open positions duties, closely monitoring each of the affected budget lines. On April 6th, School Board Rep Cutter shared the annual district audit report and accompanying presentation to the school board. Also on April 6th, Mr. Cutter updated the committee that the school board voted not to continue with a written special education budget policy. On April 10th, Mr. Sun shared the agenda for the April 20th meeting. On April 17th, Ms. Stevens shared a draft best practices document with the committee, which we'll review tonight. On April 18th, Ms. Stevens shared proposed changes to the bylaws as discussed at the March 30th meeting. On April 19th, Ms. Stevens shared a second draft best practices document with the committee after feedback from Mr. Hayes. And then finally today, on April 20th, Mr. Sun shared the updated agenda with correspondence as well as the school BA report. That is all of our correspondence from the last 3 weeks. And with that, we'll go to town business. Mr. Leary, any updates from the town?
About the only thing that's going on is the end of next week, Interim Chief Nichols is retiring. That is his retirement date. We've appointed Ed Glancy as interim fire chief for the meantime being. So, other than that, that's about it.
We have an interim to interim.
Any questions for Mr. Leary in the town tonight?
Yep. So where are we at, Bob, right now as far as a search for a fire chief, a police chief, a assistant chief for fire?
They have put out a search for someone to replace Captain Nichols' full-time position before he was reassigned as interim chief. I'm not quite sure where that stands, that, all those are going into the fire department, and then they'll update us as far as that goes. There's discussion on where we want to go as far as the future of the fire chief position. Do we want to keep it part-time? Do we want to do it full-time, which would have to go to the voters in March? What we want to do with that. So, would welcome any input that any members have.
I know as far as the police chief, it's a legal matter, but are we still like in limbo as far as that?
It was pushed off, I think the date is tomorrow, the court date's tomorrow. It's in the open now because it's a court hearing, so I think they're back in court tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Anything else from Mr. Leary on the town side tonight?
If you decide to go full-time fire chief, has to go for the voters, what are you gonna do in the meantime, I guess?
Interim, part-time?
Interim part-time?
Yeah, it would have to
Okay.
stay part-time until the voters approve it, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Seeing nothing else on the town side, we will move to school business. And any updates from Mr. Plansky?
The only update really is the calendar for the budget process.
Yep.
Rather than the 24th, they wanted to deliver the budget on the 26th of October and then meet
I think the first date was November 2nd.
November 2nd and then again November 7th.
Mr. Cutter shared those dates with me last night. I've added them to the draft calendar that we'll look at here shortly, which is on the portal that we'll also look at here shortly. But what I think the good thing about that, and we can have this discussion in a minute, is it gives us a week with the budget before we have our first meeting, which is, I think, one of the goals we were trying to accomplish. And then I also shared the school BA report last night. And again, we'll look at where we're going to house a lot of that stuff moving forward. Any questions for the school and Mr. Plansky tonight?
The report's showing a $2.5 million available balance. Any idea where that's gonna end up at the end of the year?
The thought is there will be a fund balance at the end of the year. Nobody's willing to make a guess. Food service is running over. And then
Special ed trans.
there's special ed concerns, and then there's still change orders coming for the LMS project. And that's in the BA's report, if you look at the spreadsheets, it gives you.
I know one of the things that was talked about last night, I didn't catch all of it, had to do with transportation, potentially going from 9 buses to 8 buses.
Yeah, that was part of the conversation last night. I don't think, and don't want to speak for the whole board, but if we ever had a bus breakdown or something, I think it would cause a real problem with a couple of the routes. So don't know where that will land. No final decision was made on that. I think there's a lot more due diligence that has to be done.
Plus, I know there's a lot of conversation, excuse me, too, as far as the length of the drives.
Yeah.
I mean, and then what time the kids would like get to school, get picked up, get dropped off. and-
GMS kids that would be on the bus for like an hour in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that. Any additional questions for Mr. Plansky tonight?
I do have a question, and it has to do with busing. Because there's been many a days lately that bus 1 and 7 are combined. So I'm just curious as to whether or not anyone's gone back, whether it would be the BA that would go to the bus company and look for some type of refund.
I don't know that he has. We probably should. I think there's an issue with one of the drivers that is out on, I'm going to say an extended leave. I don't know the particulars.
Yeah.
That's causing that combining of the routes.
And they can't find substitutes, I'm assuming.
They have they do have some substitutes. I asked if there were substitutes that were dedicated to us, and they're really not. They're dedicated to who needs,
Yeah.
and, we have what, seven or 8, 9 buses? Nashua probably has 20.
Yeah, at least.
No, but that is a great point, though. If we're paying for a route we're not getting, then
Right.
we should be tracking, like, hey,
Some sort of a credit for next year, even if it's not a refund per se, maybe it's a credit towards next year.
I'll take that back to the board.
Because I don't think they did anything for the schools when they combined the middle school and the high school. That in itself saved them that extra run. And there was no compensation, I don't believe, returned, because I believe they said
that contract
Awesome.
never favors us.
I was gonna
Just-
because of the cost of fuel, so they kind of like offset. Well, I mean, that's not our
But
responsibility. The fuel went
they'll,
up.
they'll take a nice increase when fuel increases, but they never give us a refund when it went down, so,
I I don't want to be misquoting this, but if I recall correctly, were we in the last year of that contract? Yeah.
I think the problem we had though is that there was one company willing to bid the contract, so you're kind of stuck. Unless you could consolidate with another area, but
Wasn't it the bus company that,
first,
we were like the only district that got credit back
From the-
when we shut down for
from
COVID,
COVID.
I think,
Because it was in our contract.
right? So,
It won't
as
be
much
next
as we got, right, yeah, we're not gonna get as good of a contract next time.
I'll write that down.
It's just, I mean, I keep seeing emails as far as bus 1 and 7. I think it's something that should be looked at. I mean, there should be some type of compensation in return.
That's a good point. If our contract is up, the opportunity to get a credit next year isn't going to exist, Peter. So, I mean, the refund is
Well,
probably going to be the way to go.
the contract is written such a number of runs,
Right.
per routes per number of days, and if we're not literally getting them, it should be a simple, we're paying for 9, we're getting 8, where's my credit?
Especially if it's not our fault. If they can't
Right.
supply the bus, then
Right.
it makes sense.
Anything else for Mr. Plansky this evening?
Is there any concern around the number of resignations
Yes,
this year? Yeah.
there
Like
is.
looking into the reasoning why maybe that's happening?
There are some thoughts on the root cause. A lot of that was discussed in non-public. And we hope it will be addressed.
Okay. Cool.
All right.
Did we
Anything
want
else?
to talk about the special ed policy, or is that under something else?
We don't have it on tonight's agenda essentially because
Nothing went forward.
the school board decided not to do anything with it. So
Right.
there's really nothing else
Well,
on our end to do.
other than that, just it formally terminates longstanding practice, and I think we should be aware of that. Like, longstanding practice has been one thing, the school has decided that we don't want to do that anymore, and so we, as a board, need to take that into consideration as we go forward with our budget review.
Yes, and my understanding, and may seek clarification on this, this could be another question, Peter, is I know there was a meeting when we were over at the firehouse, that the school board did vote. I think there was a vote to return the money, any special ed underspend, which from the sounds of it, there may not be, based on some conversations. But if there is, that it's returned for this year. And then the idea of this policy was anything beyond that and moving forward.
That's correct.
Yeah. So the board did vote to return any underspend for this year,
Right.
assuming there is any.
Well, we have no recourse if they choose not to, really.
Correct.
So as we go forward to the next budget cycle, we should keep in mind that the way it's been handled in the past no longer exists. So that needs to be something we consider as we do our review.
Well, we also have to realize that the school board was willing on their end, and the budget committee that's where it fell apart. Because there were different accounts about what that agreement was, so once we try to get it into writing, that's when we realized, okay, nobody really understands the expectations.
I will,
Because it was the budget committee that decided not to move forward with. policy.
respectfully disagree with that assessment.
because
I
we
don't,
have
I think the school
different-
board tried to change these longstanding practice. So it is
for our
not,
account, And we have other members that say that the.
we can go back
agreement
through
was
the meeting
different.
minutes since 2000, and the school existed, and it was discussed every year. And the reductions were made every year up until we had a change in superintendent. So that it is long-standing, long-established, it was changed. So it is not the budget committee's fault that it fell apart. I will not, we can spin it however we like, but you will not convince me otherwise.
I think we know where we stand on this. We know the school board's opinion on it. I think we have a pulse of where this group is. And I think we take all factors into consideration, whether there is a return, if there's an opportunity to be returned in a few months, and what the special ed budget looks like when we start to look at it in the fall for the following year. All of those factors, I think, will play into how we handle the special education budget moving forward.
I think they're down to one special ed teacher and no pairs anyway, so it might be a pretty empty budget.
We'll just have to plan for the lawsuits or the out-of-district tuitions as a result.
A lot of it is to outplace kids.
Right.
Yeah. And if
All
there's
right.
no one in district to teach them, we have to outplace all of them, then you're in a lot of trouble.
That's a lot more
Well,
expensive.
traditionally in the past, a lot of it came from transportation, because the transportation
Provision and
budget
outplacement.
was traditionally such that for one outplacement was one bus. The reality is that those were actually combined or consolidated with neighboring schools, so there was always savings achieved, and every year a reduction was taken in that line. So,
They were always open with that. They always budgeted worst case and said they hoped to be able to find
oh yeah,
ride sharing opportunities.
and we
Yeah.
took those reductions.
All right, anything else?
I actually
Go
do
ahead.
have a question for Mr. Plansky. So it was brought up, I think, last meeting for us, that there was an influx of 5 special ed students.
That is the belief. I don't know that that's been confirmed.
Okay.
But each one of those children would be very expensive.
Okay, so I guess here would be my thing, because, it's typically floated that it's $150,000 per kid. However, I would like to know if we had any net losses since the beginning of the year. The position that was approved in the Warren article that was sponsored by Ms. Bandersky was supposedly to reduce our need to outsource. Are any of these being leveraged by that investment that the taxpayers made last year into that position? And my final question is, from a transportation standpoint, do we need to budget for all 5 for individual transportation? I would just like to, instead of just
I
a
believe it's
snap,
one family.
what's that?
I believe the 5 are all in the same family.
Okay, that's my potential question. Do you need 5 buses going to that one place to disperse them all over the place? My point
would-
being
I would
is that I
certainly
would
hope-
like to get more information about what the real impact is, instead of just a rubber stamp, it's 150 times 5, and trying to scare us into thinking that the sky is falling and there's no money for it.
Okay.
And I think whatever that would be, net loss, net gain, we would see in a proposed budget in the fall, right?
But I guess my point is, people are quick to tell us that there's more coming in, but they don't tell us if there's students that are departing. So like, all I ever hear is, I need more, I need more, I need more. I never hear, I only need a little bit more because 1 left and 2 came in. That's my point.
So like an inventory, not necessarily with names, but with,
Right, obviously not with names. And then I would like to see what our return on investment is based on that particular position, because that was supposed to eliminate some of the outsourcing needs to the tune of 100 to 150,000 if you include transportation is no longer needed, plus that particular item being covered in the school instead of outsourced.
And I know you asked that question in November when Dr. Jetty and Mr. Totten were here, and I believe the answer at that time was not as of yet. So has
I don't know if
anything?
that position was ever filled, to be honest.
Oh.
Maybe one of the ones that's still open.
Well, then we have money in the budget.
well, I think you will have seen some postings today for new special ed teachers.
Anything else from Mr. Plansky tonight? All right. Thank you, Mr. Plansky.
Welcome to your first budget committee.
New meat, let's go after them.
Got a good list of questions there, but thank you for taking those back.
Sure.
All right, next we have member input, new business. As I mentioned at the beginning, I want to move up the third bullet that we had, which was communication, organizational materials. We talked about this at our March meeting, that this was something that Ms. Stevens and I were going to investigate, and really under the sense of how do we better organize everything we have, things that are shared outwardly so that it's easy for the community to see, and things for us to be able to go back and find when we go into budget season. How can we easily find reports, minutes, agendas, all of those things in one spot? Because for me, for the last 3 years, it's been searching email to try to find things and just not overly easy to do that. So Ms. Stevens and I met with Mr. Brunel before our meeting tonight. He walked us through how the Board of Selectmen, as well as the Planning Board, have set up portals to organize their information. And we've started kind of maybe a version 1.0 of this. to organize our information. So I sent everyone the link. I just want to quickly kind of walk you across the top of it. You'll notice at the top there's a link to today's date. That will always change every month. So after tonight, you'll see May 25th, I believe, is our next meeting. You'll see our agenda. You'll see minutes there. And then we will move the April 20th over to the far right under past meetings. So if you have to go back and find an agenda from March or April, it'll be under past meetings. Next to that is budget committee documents. This is where you're going to find kind of those documents that we have that stay fairly static, bylaws, calendars, things like that, so we can go back and reference those. All of our meeting minutes are there as well, and these are organized. Mr. Sullivan has already, we have all of our 2023 ones there. If you scroll down below that, you'll see if you're really not able to sleep at night, you can go back and read budget committee meetings going back to 2008. So they're all there and archived and able for you to easily access. The next section is financial reports, and there's two different headers there, one for the town and one for the school. So when you go to the town side, you're going to see links to town budget reports, financial reports, payroll, accounts receivable, all there organized in folders. And then on the school side, we're still trying to fine-tune how to organize this. So this was kind of the first stab at it. On the school side, the very first link is a link to that capital projects fund. So that's an active link that Mr. Totten continually updates that shows all the changes as it pertains to the capital projects. Right below that, we inserted the BA report that was approved last night. We'll probably continue to refine this school page and figure out a format that works best, but it has the relevant information there for right now. And then the past meeting section is blank, but will get updated. And then you can also search. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a search icon, and you can search content. So again, give us, Ms. Stevens is gladly kind of taking the lead on this as a part of her communication archivist role, but I'm going to help support as well. So give us a couple of months, I think, to fine tune this with a couple of meetings, and by the time we hit our budget season in the fall, we'll have everything organized really well, and hopefully it's easy for people to find things, access things, and it's all in one spot. So I'll pause there.
Can we get a link in here as far as the questions that get asked?
So we were talking with Mr. Brunel about that at the very end, and we just need to figure out the best way to do that. We can do like a document that tracks. It's what he was sharing with us. We haven't set that up yet. Essentially, we could set up one for the town and one for the school. It's a real-time document. So we've got a handful of questions from Mr. Plansky tonight. We could capture all of those there, and then as they're answered, the answers are put there, and we can all see them, and the town can see them as well. So we haven't set that up yet. We were talking to him about that as he was leaving. So yes, we will do that, hopefully by our next month's meeting.
It'll be in the portal?
It'll be on the portal. I don't know where yet. We'll have to figure that out. But yes, we'll put something there that will track town questions and school questions. Just need to figure out who's going to do that. Like, is Andrew or Peter going to load them there? Am I going to do it? Is Kate going to do it? We need to figure out some logistics on that.
And bonus, you might be able to turn on notifications for changes.
Yes.
So you'd get a note like, hey, a new question, pop
Right.
up. New answer, pop up.
Right. And that can be set up where if people raise their hands and say, I want to be notified, then we knew that. And we can go, when I say we, John can go in and say, Carrie's permissions are such that she gets notified every time something's added to this document. Mm-hmm. And then she gets an email that question's been answered by Dr. Jetty, and she can go in and see it. So getting there, not all the way there, but a step in the right direction for us to organize all of our information. Comments, questions, thoughts?
You can expect this to change over the next couple of months
Yeah.
as we organize it.
It'll get, like I said, we literally started publishing content about 45 minutes ago. So
So my only comment, and this is layout wise, is if everything has a preview, it's gonna be scrolling forever.
Right. Yeah.
totally agree with you. That was just, and that you're referring to that budget committee documents page.
Yeah.
That was literally me just adding those.
So I like the idea, I'm just like.
Yeah, no, I agree. But if you look at the format of the town financial reports,
Right.
where it's more small icon based, something like that might be easier to navigate. Yes,
Yeah.
I totally agree with you on that. So, feedback always welcome. other things like that, as we start to use this more and you want to see certain things organized better or laid out better, just let us know.
Looking at the capital projects, under the school, they have expenses by vendor, but maybe if we did a category expenses by building,
There is one,
is it? I didn't see it.
Maybe it's by year, you had to add them up.
Oh, by year?
Maybe if you went to the individual years, but there should.
On the
unless it's
summary
the summary,
page, it has
maybe?
expenses by location.
Summary, maybe?
It is, if you go to the FY23 tab, you'll see the breakdown by
But that's just for
location.
FY twenty-three though, like,
But the summary does show FY21 to 23 by location there.
It's kind of in the middle of.
Yeah, if you go to the summary
Expenses by
tab,
location,
go to the
F&G.
summary tab on the far left, Bob, at the bottom,
Yeah.
and then maybe scroll up. There you go, right there, top center.
Oh, okay.
what was district? Is that the SAU offices?
District is anything that applies to all the buildings.
Consultants were a big part of that, I noticed. I was listening to that part of the meeting last night, yeah.
Because I asked that question.
I would think that consultants then would be applied to the building for whom they are consulting at that particular project.
I think the way I understood the conversation was you had a consultant that was working on two different projects at one time, and so they built it at the district level.
They didn't have individual project codes? Oh, you're killing me here.
Good question. So again, like,
The real world.
just looking at this particular, like, using this capital project fund spreadsheet that most of us were looking at, this is something that Mr. Totten continues to update. So that link on that page will probably stay static there at the top. So anytime you have a question or want more information about capital projects, you click on that link, it brings you here, and he is continually updating this. And again, we'll continue to fine tune, adding things like the questions, better organization, better layout. But as we use this more, please feel free to send feedback. All right, so staying in our newly created portal, next on our agenda, we have our 2023 bylaws. So if you go to that Budget Committee Documents page, the document that is at the bottom is our 2022 bylaws, and you can click on that and pop it out and open it up into, it's a PDF that's there currently. I know we looked at this at our last meeting. The only proposed change we had, and Ms. Stevens sent this over in an email, and I'll read this as a proposed change here. This is under, it's section F. Let me just get the right page. It's page 5, towards the bottom of page 5, and it is letter F. So the change, I'll read it and then I'll strike. The communication archivist shall be appointed by the committee to provide regular updates from scheduled and special meetings to the town via approved communication platforms, including but not limited to the town website, town social media platforms, and other approved social media groups. The updates, strike out shall and add may, include high-level information from each meeting, and then striking out, including public and member input, old and new business, so that part is stricken out, and added in its place is links to the Budget Committee portal, draft meeting minutes, and meeting recordings if available. The communication archivist may respond to general questions and comments on social media by referring to specific meeting minutes, recordings, or local regulations. To the extent requested information is not recorded, recommend the commenter provide public input to the committee directly. The communication archivist shall maintain the Budget Committee online portal with all documents shared with the committee. That last statement I just read was a new statement that was added as well. So with that, any additional proposed changes to our bylaws? And if none, I will entertain a motion to approve the bylaws as amended by Ms. Stevens.
So made.
I have a motion by Ms. Douglas. I missed that.
Second.
Second by Mr. Barca. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain, motion carries 9-0-0. So I will I will go in and update our bylaws with the changes that we had tonight. I will send those over to the town, so we have those and they can be posted on the town website, and then we'll get them updated on the portal as well. Okay, next on our agenda, we have review budget calendar for 2023-24. So again, staying on that documents page, if you go back to the top, I have a draft calendar. We looked at this draft calendar last month. It has changed since the last time we met. Mr. Plansky referenced this during his school update. Nothing has changed on the town side, but if you go down to the school budget meeting schedule, this is what changed after their discussion last night. And I took their recommendations and just inserted them here for our discussion tonight. What has been proposed is an estimated delivery of the draft school budget to the budget committee by October 26th. We would then have 1 week, approximately 1 week, to review before the first joint session, which would be held on November 2nd. And if you remember, we were trying to avoid Halloween. I think I had originally had Halloween on there as a potential date. And then the second one would be on November 7th. So in the past, we've done that Tuesday, Thursday. This is a little bit different format of doing Thursday, Tuesday. And I think the reason that was done was to try to accomplish giving us a week to have the budget in our hands to review beforehand. So I know I'm personally okay with that, because I appreciate the extra time to have the budget in our hands. We then go into the budget review. Everything after that is pretty much the same. So the changes were kind of there at the top that were proposed by the school board. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? I know the town, Ms. Kleiner, responded today that she was good with the town side. Let me just double check her note that she said. She said if the budget committee approves, she's drafted a calendar for the town to submit to the Board of Selectmen. So, but it appears good on her side. I think she was waiting for us to approve. We will not meet in July as we've historically done, so we have our monthly meetings that would run into August, and then going into our... One thing I did change from last year, I'll just kind of call this out. In looking at our schedule last year, we did a September 21st meeting that was a regular meeting, and then the next week we started the town budget process. I felt like that was probably just one extra meeting that we didn't really need. And so rather than having 2 meetings in September, we just jumped right into the town budget process. That was another change that was different from last year.
I'm not sad about that.
I just wondered then if that meeting on September 28th, whether or not we meet earlier, in case there's any business that we want to conduct before we roll into town presentations.
Possibly. I think we reserve the right to
I'm sorry, I missed that.
visit that if we need to. I don't anticipate it at that point. Those are still usually relatively shortish meetings, but we do have 3 nights of town presentations, so I think that might give us the opportunity to not start early, but
Maybe just some,
Oh, this year's starting at 6 o'clock question again.
no, he was saying because we're not going to have 2 meetings in September, if we had regular business that we needed to take care of and it didn't eat into the time of the town presentations.
Yeah, we've done that before.
Yeah, would we entertain starting early? So we'll reserve the right to
maybe
do
just
that if
something,
we need to do that.
keep in mind as far as when we get closer, that's all.
So what I'd like to do, and I put this out actually this morning to the chairs of the Board of Selectmen, to Ms. Kleiner, to the school board, is what I'd like for us to do is to approve this draft calendar. Next step is I've asked for all of our boards in town to come together in May just to talk through this. We're all in agreement on this. We've all voted on it. Let's just talk about our process that we're going to have. Let's talk about, let's double check the timelines, make sure everybody's good with it. Do we need 3 town presentations? Do we need, 2, let's just walk through this together collaboratively. I feel like us approving this tonight is just us putting our stamp on it that we support this as a budget committee. If we go into that meeting in May and there's any significant changes, which I don't anticipate at this point, we could come back and revisit this because any significant changes are not gonna be until the fall. But my recommendation is we would approve this as is tonight. We'll look to have more of a process type meeting with the boards, just about how are we gonna share information? How are we gonna line up our presentations? Are we gonna have people come in person? Are they gonna be virtual? More of those logistical type things. So we're fine tuned for the fall. But I'll entertain a motion to approve our calendar for,
I mean, the February dates are gonna be the 3rd and the 10th, so I don't know if we need.
are those confirmed?
Well, the way the wording is written on the RSA, it's the 2 Saturdays after the last Monday in January, so that would be, your options are the 3rd and the 10th. The window is the 3rd and the 10th.
And I guess the only reason I didn't put anything beyond TBD at this point
Is if you combine.
Yes, was a hope that we might revisiting
Right.
combined.
But I'm just saying, it's not gonna be the 17th or the 24th. It's either gonna be the 3rd or the 10th.
Yep. Yeah. I left it TBD in hopes
Yeah.
that maybe we combine more for our purpose.
People who like to combine.
You don't control that anyways, right? The two boards.
Yeah, the
They
board,
decide.
they determine it. We don't really have any input on that, no.
But, right, but just plan that it's gonna be probably one of those 2 dates,
Yep.
or both, so.
We don't have a date for March, do we?
It's the second Tuesday, right?
Tuesday.
So it should
I
be
think
the
it's the
12th.
12th.
I'll update
It's gonna be
that.
March 12th, yeah.
Right.
All right, so with the adding in of March 12th, do I have a motion to approve our 2023-2024 Budget Committee calendar?
So made.
A motion by Ms. Douglas, second by Ms. Stevens. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion carries 9-0-0. So I will add in March 12th. I'm gonna leave the February dates kind of as they are. I might put just a note in there that February 3rd, February 10th. And then if anything does come out of our May meeting that significantly changes this, we'll bring it back for that May 25th meeting that we have. Okay, and last on our agenda, under member input new business, we have review best practices document for budget committee. Before I turn it over to Ms. Stevens to share this, and again, this is embedded on our documents page in the portal. It's the middle document that's a Google Doc, so you can scroll in line or you can click and open it. This came out of the conversation that we had last month about just would this be a part of our bylaws? Would this be more of just how we generally operate business as it pertains to things about the tax cap, as it pertains to things about questions, meeting times and things like that, a shell of a calendar. And the idea behind this was just to have some sort of a template that if half this board were gone at some point in time down the road, that someone who walked in would have something to look at. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Stevens to kind of share, and then we can open it up for conversations, questions, discussions. My recommendation would be that this is something we adopt. We don't have to do it tonight. We can have some time, and technically I think we should discuss it, review it, and vote on it in May. It's not necessarily a bylaw, but again, something we would this sitting budget committee would adopt as best practices. So Ms. Stevens, I'll let you share.
So this mostly comes out of because I think, well, besides Mr. Plansky, I'm still the newest person on budget committee, or I guess Mr. Bork too. And what I notice is there's a lot of friction because different members, different boards are held to expectations that they may or may not be fully aware of. There's people with the same, time on town boards that have different ideas of how something went. So I just want to write down just what pertains to the budget committee. And then it's also something for other boards to reference so they know what to expect from the committee. Because there are certain like traditions and things in town, like one of the things I put in here, Carrie, you had mentioned something about warrant articles not being voted on the same
Yes.
day that they're presented. So I put a blurb in here for should consider holding at least 5 days like that.
5 business
I
days,
just
by the
came up-
way. I was thinking about it. It should be.
Sure, like I just threw in 5 days. This is all up for.
I thought it
you
was
know,
in our bylaws that we
I
had.
didn't see it. That was in the bylaws, and maybe I missed it. But things like that, like common practices that it seems like is historically known, but you wouldn't know about it until you accidentally did it wrong. And then somebody comes out and you're like, wait a second, this isn't how we do things. So I just wanted to get it written down and to try to make those sorts of things run a little smoother for both town and school side. And for, new members coming in, because there are a lot of traditions in Litchfield that are not common practice in other towns. We have new business administrator at the school side, we have new town administrator at the town side. So just some of those things that Litchfield does that maybe other towns don't, like putting positions on the warrant article. That's something that Litchfield does. And I didn't put it in here because we're not adding positions on warrant articles. But I just think it's good common knowledge to have.
I mean, we could reference the history of that, because that does come up when it's not followed. It does get discussed.
Well, I would say that should go somewhere with the Board of Selectmen, I think, or the
Well,
school
it
board
comes
or
down
something.
to whether or not this, well, sure, but it could be that whether or not it belongs in the basic budget itself. That's why they get pulled out. The budget committee does not put forward a budget with those in traditionally. There have been exceptions. I don't know, there have been variances to that policy, but traditionally, it had been that new positions were removed by the budget committee and encouraged to be put forward on the warrant article. We couldn't force them to do it.
Right, it's not that's not really our.
But we
purview.
could remove them from the proposed budget, and that's what traditionally had been done up until.
Okay. See, I didn't know that came from the budget committee, so.
Well, it came from
Things
a
like
warrant article back in the day.
I think, I remember 3+ years ago when I started on the budget committee, anything I got was just kind of things that were forwarded to me. I think Miss Douglas was the chair at the time. Mr. Cutter, shared some things that were good minutes and agendas and things to go back and look through. To me, this felt like just a good starting point. The intent is if someone new joins the board halfway through the year unexpected or is elected again in March, it can be pointed in reference to this to say, here's some best practices that this committee has used over the years. Here's background information about, the town of Litchfield, the RSAs, everything from the tax cap, how we organize questions, even how we end our meetings, right? That we should try to conclude by 9:30. We could vote to institute a hard stop. That little things like that we have done in the past are just there for people to know that has been past practice and can be revisited.
So for note, in the bylaws, section 5B, letter C on page 4, it shall be the policy of the budget committee to require 2 separate meetings to vote on any budget request. 1 meeting to have the request presented and discussed, and a subsequent meeting when the vote will take place. This policy may be waived by a majority of the committee. So it actually,
I read that as just the budget, not
a budget,
separate warrant articles.
well, it's part of
So-
the budget, so it actually has always
Yeah.
fallen under the same requirement.
Okay.
So, but it can be discussed here. Like I said, especially considering the type of warrant articles that come forward, it's only appropriate that the budget committee has the opportunity to perform their due diligence. Because I feel like we've seen what happens when we don't have that time.
So I did get feedback from Bill. Did anyone else have anything else to add? Carrie, you just said 5 business days. Now I have to find that.
Well, I guess we have to decide whether that conflicts with the bylaws. It's the budget, So, I mean, it's the how to prepare the budget, part of the budget are the warrant articles. I mean, to me, it's all part of the budget process, so I don't differentiate between the two.
And I guess I would argue, is it actually 5 business days? 'Cause I mean, back in the day,
Well,
we'd review it Tuesday, vote Thursday. It was just 2 meetings, you know what I mean? It wasn't necessarily 5 days.
but it wasn't closed. We didn't finalize, like, we had the
No, it was never
opportunity.
finalized, but we did vote the Thursday.
But I think did we vote or did we ask questions? Like, we had the thing, we had the meeting,
was a while
we asked
ago.
the questions,
Yeah.
we had.
I remember being there Tuesday voting. I thought we voted Thursday.
I
But
thought-
could've, maybe it wasn't.
But we didn't finalize and lock down the budget until several.
I mean, we never finalized the budget until after the deliberative anyway, so.
I almost
There were a
wonder.
lot of meetings.
I almost wonder if to ask, because if you go back and look at the calendar, the way it's laid out, you know, town and school warrant articles are presented December 14th. And then we don't vote on them until January 4th. So there's obviously 5 days in between there.
That's fine.
But I think I know what you're
in
going to say.
December though.
But I think the issue is, maybe the spirit of this is, if the town and school warrant articles are being presented on December 14th, I would like to see them at least 5 days beforehand, before the presentations, right? Like, here are the recommended warrant articles being presented by the town and the school, you know, at least 5 days before being presented, so that we have time to review them, to organize thoughts, questions. It's the same ask that we have around the budget, you know, needing that time to review, organize, put questions together, so that we are efficient in our meetings.
I
know?
like that. I was willing to settle for please just give it to me by mid-December, because I feel like we've been getting them first week in January.
I don't remember ever having them in December.
I think it's
In
still,
my 6 years in the school board and however many years here, I don't remember ever
I
having
think when it
them.
comes to warrant articles, it's always a work in progress. I mean, the same thing happened with the town. I mean, the perfect example, right, was the fire truck. That thing kept changing, and all of a sudden it's like, all right, we're gonna use the funds, we're not gonna use the funds.
But we knew that was coming long in advance. My problem is when
That
you're
was
like,
coming a year ago, but I mean, it
the
doesn't mean
day before the
anything.
vote, by the way, we're doing this major renovation. Like, what just happened? So at least a heads up of some sort, that like, these are what we're thinking of, would be nice. But I'm sure I can come up with questions before I even know the full dollar amount.
Other thoughts around these?
I'll give you a heads up, Carrie, there's gonna be a warrant article for a new school.
Oh,
So, there you
and I'm
go.
pretty sure you already know my opinion on that. And I already have put
yes,
lots of questions
yes.
on it.
Any other thoughts on the best practices document tonight? And I guess,
I like it.
I think.
I do too. I think it almost could like serve as a cover letter within the bylaws, on the bylaws. You don't have to separate it.
That's not a bad idea.
It's almost like an opening letter, like,
Yeah.
and here are our bylaws.
It's not technically a part of the bylaws. It's like the
It would just be like.
introduction to the Litchfield Budget Committee.
I don't think it has to be a separate document. I think it should be like embedded in it and just be right on the cover.
Other thoughts around that?
So not necessarily the best practices, but it did prompt something that maybe on the main page, it has all the members and contact information. It would be nice to have in terms of what the term is. Otherwise, you have to keep going back over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Who was up, how long was their term, stuff like that. And that way the public gets a good understanding. If they want to unseat one of us, they know which one to go after.
Is that on the
Unfortunately, there hasn't been. You laugh, but there was a period of time when we constantly had special elections. And I had to have like a color coded, like, oh, this person was out, but this person came in, and this person resigned. It was awful. So yes, the year.
That's when you
I'm
can
gonna-
stop and someone asks you, so who's up for, budget?
I have no idea.
I'm gonna put that, Scott. I'm gonna ask Mr. Brunel. We can do it on the portal side. I think it should also be on the town website as well.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So what we'll do with these best practice document, between now and May 25th, if you get a chance to read over it again, additional thoughts, additional questions, at our May meeting, we'll vote to approve these for this sitting budget committee. I see this much like our bylaws, whether we embed it or not, is something that's revisited every year. If there's something that this committee or future committees want to address with it.
It's a good start. You can always change it down the road, so.
Agreed. You're right, Bob. It could be unlike the bylaws, which we adopt and they are static until next season. These best practices could be something that could change in the fall.
Yeah, anytime,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. With that, I'll open it up for any additional member input or new business.
I just have two things, and they both came out of the last selectman meeting. I'm not certain who had an opportunity to watch it. But there was two different things that Ms. Kleiner brought up. One, and I think about like one of the first meetings when, Bill, you asked the question about the town, like, you know, as far as fuel, the increase in fuel, and like, are you gonna have enough, the line, whatever. Ms. Kleiner made the statement that the budget committee does not have the authority to question expenditures that are made within the year.
That's not true.
She says it's part of, not the RSA.
Was there a statement that we don't have the ability to question them or don't have the ability to?
We don't.
We don't approve them.
No, it's exactly what she said. The budget committee does not have the authority to question expenditures that are made within the year.
I would respectfully disagree with
I
that.
would disagree with that.
We have the right to question it, but
It
don't,
was
doesn't
part of
mean
the
that you can
statute.
change it. You can't like say, I question it, you shouldn't have done
Telling
that.
you what she said, so if,
That's an I believe that's an inaccurate
then
statement.
you can have Bob like check into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, our job, we get monthly expenditure reports, and part of our job is probably, especially this time of year with lighter agendas, is as we go through those and see questions, we can ask both the school and the town
Well,
about
that's
those
what-
expenditures.
And that's one thing, we just get clarification, that way we don't have to waste our time.
Can you read the statement again? I'm trying to write it
Yep.
down.
I can tell you when it was on your meeting.
Okay, this past meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
At 6:59 and 40 seconds. The budget committee does not have the authority to question expenditures that are made within the year.
Then why do they submit the monthly reports?
Yeah, why do we need the report then? That is our job to review it,
That was my thought.
yeah.
You said you had a second one?
Yeah, just the other thing is, because then they brought up, she also then made a statement when they were discussing the police department and expenditures. And she said, not to mention that the budget committee has significantly
Oh, cut the budget.
cut the budget.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just to clarify, I mean, there were like two large cuts were made. The first was $105,273, and that was for the police officer that
Is
is deployed. So it's a salary that has just been sitting there and being spent, but not on a police officer. The other large expenditure was $64,000 for the car. So that left a total of $13,328 that this budget committee cut and all the other line items. I don't think that's significantly cutting the budget.
Well, cutting the budget, we're still legally obligated to provide a budget that falls within the tax cap. So what was what did she propose we do? Break the law in order to
No, I'm
provide
just saying, I mean, she made it sound like it was like we really sliced into the police one, and we didn't. I don't think we did.
I think when you look at the number as a whole,
Right.
without context, $180,000+, that's a really big number.
Right.
I think when you break it down and look at a position that has been unfilled, the cruiser, and you add those two together, you're left with the 13,000 and change that he said. That were smaller cuts that we made, kind of going through things like fuel and other places. So, I think.
I hope it's just a misunderstanding of what she was saying.
Well, I think to Carrie's point too, like, we have a legal obligation to get under what that tax cap was at the time last year.
And it was the least painful way of doing
And,
it.
and unfortunately, the police department, and specifically that position, was one of a very small pathways that we had to accomplish that goal.
While maintaining other services. I mean,
Correct.
because alternatively, we could have kept that position that has not been filled, and the department unfortunately is understaffed.
Right.
Or we could have taken it from salt, like, I don't know, recycling?
The other option was, I think we were talking about, was cutting like one of the SRO officers that was approved by the voters. We said the easiest path forward is to cut this position that's no one was using.
So my hope is that it was a misunderstanding, and I haven't watched it, so I'm relying on the way it's being conveyed. So I'm hoping that,
What do you mean by a misunderstanding?
well, I'm hoping that, I didn't watch it, so I don't know, maybe she maybe she didn't mean it in the way in which it was taken. I don't know. I didn't watch it, so I can only rely on your retelling, which upsets me. If that's an accurate interpretation, but I don't want. She's not here to defend herself, so I can't ask that question. So my hope is that there's a miscommunication in between there that hopefully we can resolve in an amicable fashion. So,
Maybe if you change the word from question to change,
right.
right? You don't have the authority to change how the money is spent. Maybe
No,
she's
no.
thinking it that way.
You're talking about you're going to the second.
Right, no, I agree. I think that reality is it was the most responsible way of being able to fulfill our legal obligation. I understand that there may have been some hurt feelings and upset people as associated with that.
You on the first thing I said or the second thing? I'm not sure.
I'm thinking you were asking me about what Ms. Kleiner's statement about cutting deeply.
The police budget.
So I wasn't a cut-out reduction, because I think I proposed the reduction, and it wasn't one I made happily. But the reality is, if I'm reducing a position that is not currently being utilized,
We didn't even reduce, I don't even look
Also
at the
recognizing
reduced
there's other
position. We just
unfilled
took the monies
positions.
away that were being spent, not on what they're saying they're gonna be spent on.
well, I mean,
It's no different than
if a
what happens
position-
with, it's no different what you do with the school, right?
I don't
If
disagree.
I only have, I have 4 math teachers, I only need 3, and they leave the 4th math teacher, and the first thing we're gonna do is cut it.
No, I don't disagree, but I understand, but when the school doesn't need a math teacher, it's often reflective of the enrollment. The reality is the police needs their staffing but cannot achieve it currently. So it would be a reduction for a different reason. Their hopes, maybe one day, all of a sudden we have 25 applicants and we can fill it, and then they're in a position where they can't fill a
But
position.
this position that we cut, we cut the salary, we knew that officer wasn't coming back, we had to hold the position for that officer.
We don't, I mean,
We still do.
We still do,
I know.
and we know the monies can be found if need be.
We say we know he's not coming back, that doesn't mean he couldn't come back. So I mean,
Does he come back?
again, I don't disagree, but he has the legal ability to come back.
I think
absolutely.
I think we're splitting hairs on that.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just, like I said, I haven't watched the meeting. I don't know the tone. But if that is a completely accurate representation of what was said, I would be upset too.
Can I address Mr. Burke's first point?
Yes.
So, and I remember this from doing the research for the school side of things. So if you look at RSA 3222, so the first thing that was just brought up here as well, upon request by the Budget Committee, the governing body of the town or district or the town manager or other administrative official shall forthwith submit to the Budget Committee a comparative statement of all appropriations, all expenditures, including all sub-accounts used by the governing body, by them made in such additional detail as the Budget Committee may require. So why do we get the monthly statements? Because 3222 says that we can go ahead and request that.
Yeah.
The Budget Committee shall meet periodically to review such statements. Here's the next part where I think Ms. Kleiner was trying to touch on. It would be an interpretation. I just want to read the line so everybody can make up their own decision. The provision of this section shall not be construed to mean that the Budget Committee or any member of the committee shall have any authority to dispute or challenge the discretion of other officials over current town or district expenditures, except provided in RSA 3223, which is an initiation of removal. That's a whole different story.
Right.
So that might be where she's using that line to come to that conclusion, but everybody can interpret it their own way.
I think it's your definition of the word question, right? Like asking a question about an expenditure or saying, Board of Selectmen, you cannot, we don't, as a budget committee, don't think you should spend this money on this particular item. We don't have the authority to do that.
Right.
Right.
To tell them how to or how not to spend the money. It could be open for interpretation. I agree. And I think, look, I think Ms. Kleiner has done a fabulous, fabulous job for this town, and she jumped into our budget season literally as we were starting. So I kind of feel like this particular one hopefully was just a misunderstanding.
Right.
I do think the police, her job is to protect the departments, right? And unfortunately, the police took the brunt of a lot of our cuts last year, and I admire her for sticking up for her departments, and that's part of her job.
Right.
I think just making sure the right information's out there, that yes, it was a big number that was cut, But when you break it down and look at the person and the car, after that, it was a very small amount that was cut from really their overall operating budget.
So I guess in follow-up to what I just read, Mr. Leary, if you wouldn't mind
Yep.
asking Ms. Kleiner if she feels that anyone from the Budget Committee or the Budget Committee as a whole violated 3222, certainly would like to have that discussion if she feels that that has occurred.
Okay. Anything else? Member input, new business.
For the record, I've always said you should always ask the questions.
Yeah.
So I've never discouraged anybody from asking questions. I hope you keep asking questions because.
And that's why I just want to get clarification, I mean, from her statement. It's
I
like,
mean, I've
Yep.
never felt that she's been reluctant to answer anything, so I'm hoping that it was just a misspeak or something like that, because I felt that she was very willing to work with us. I mean, again, like I said, I'm sure the reduction was painful. Nobody wanted to make it, but legally something had to be done. Which is why we now have a 5% tax cap, right, to help in future.
All right, if there's no other member input, new business, I will once again open it up for public input. And again, seeing no one here, I
Pick
will,
him, pick him.
I will close public input. And before I entertain a motion, I will say our next Budget Committee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, May 25th. I will physically not be here, but I will join remotely because I'm traveling. What I would like to do is make a motion for Ms. Stevens to chair and facilitate that meeting since she'll be here in person. So just a heads up for that. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made.
A motion by Ms. Douglas, second by Ms. Stevens. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain. Motion carries 9-0-0. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. If you're traveling, have a great spring break. Stay safe. Have a good night.